Just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we can start the session. Thank you. Okay, good morning. First of all, thank you for joining the webinar. Obviously, today's primarily around a bit of a back to school planning webinar, and obviously how Parallels remote application server is actually enabling support and back to schooling and supporting the solutions for education and implementing remote teaching and remote learning solutions. For today, primarily, what we want to try and do is run through a small agenda where we're going to focus on a little bit about who is Parallels, not too much time, to be honest with you. A bit more around some of the educational digital transformation, some of the key facts behind this, and to try and understand as to what some of education establishments are currently going through and what challenges they're facing. A little bit, obviously, a link of how Parallels Remote Application Server, or Parallels RAS, as I'll refer to it, is actually helping implement solutions around supporting educational establishments in the new, past, and obviously future world. We're going to move to a live demonstration so you can actually see it in action from the console, and we'll try and do a bit of a walkthrough. And then at the end of the session, we'll have a live Q&A. So obviously, if there are any questions, please feel free to use the chat in the meantime. But if you could hold any questions until the end at the Q&A session, this would be really helpful. As a quick introduction, my name is Marcus Evans, and I'm supported today by our UK pre-sales technical consultant, Paul Fisher. Just as a quick overview, between us, we've amassed around 35 years experience in working across application and desktop virtualization and various publishing solutions from the likes of Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, Nutanix, and obviously now Parallels. For some, Parallels may be a slightly unknown name, although we are very strong within education across Europe. We work with over 1,500 universities and schools on a bit of a mix of our technologies and our solutions. And just to give you a bit of an overview behind the business, many are unaware that we are around 20 years old and have probably been working with over 7 million individuals across around 143, I think, 145 different countries, which covering over 50,000 businesses with our portfolio. And to give you a quick idea about the portfolio, some will know the name primarily from, I suppose, our stronghold, which is Parallels Desktop for Mac. It's a very simple way to run Windows on a Mac. And in actual fact, today we released Desktop for Mac version 16, which is now the fastest way and most reliable way to run Windows on a Mac. And for those who are moving or considering moving towards Enterprise Chrome OS, which we certainly understand from an education point of view, is looking to be a very cost-effective solution and easier to manage solution. We will be releasing, I think it's around autumn time, that there will be basically Parallels Desktop for Chrome OS as well. As a quick view on some of the other products, Parallels Access, for example, is one of the fastest and easiest way, and probably the most reliable way to access desktops, Windows and sort of Mac desktops from anywhere, via a HTML5 browser, or even through iOS or Android devices. And Parallels Mac Management, for example, is basically one of our leading solutions in being able to manage Mac devices and now Apple iOS and iPad OS devices through SCCM. So for organizations that have a larger focus around Windows and primarily use SCCM to manage the Windows estate and Windows environments, you can now have the same control and the same levels of management within Mac, iPad OS, and iOS. Parallels Toolbox for Mac and Windows is basically a set of powerful tools where we've tried to take away and build in a level of shortcuts that are replicated across Windows and Mac. And obviously Parallels RAS, which is primarily what today's about, but I'll go into a little bit more detail around that throughout the session. What we're seeing, as I sort of mentioned in the introduction, is that whilst we've been working with education establishments for over 20 years, and during that time, we've experienced and seen a lot of transformation, some through choice and design, but more typically through unforeseen circumstances. Similar to the current pandemic, it's thrown a lot of people out of in terms of how they're trying to react and enable moving forward. We're also at a time where digitization is becoming a bit of a normal experience. If we consider now that over half of the UK sort of 10-year-olds now own a smartphone, possibly uses a lot more than parents want or even know, there's a demand and a need to ensure that user experience continues through their life, be it through their education and also into their work. Now, that home-like experience is what is driving a lot of transformation across many industries today. Now, the recent pandemic has created a lot of uncertainty. Many organizations having to react to unplanned circumstances, changing guidance, changing advice. And for education, with around 5.6% of students attending in the early stages, not many were actually able to continue their learning. Now, many universities and higher education colleges are also now facing an increase in deferments as students are concerned as to what happens next and if the term will actually start next month, for example. I know one of my daughters has also decided to defer for 12 months, partially with the concern of what happens in September, but it's also given her a bit more time to question what she does next as well. And prior to COVID-19 and prior to the recent pandemic, we some of the traditional challenges that we've seen that education has faced is been around accessibility and mobility and security. The ability to access any device from anywhere. Yet education establishments were also forced with a lot of privacy and security risks. Now, these haven't really gone away. In fact, the same challenges still exist today, but now we have added concerns. How do we implement social distances? How do we develop a density within classrooms that actually conforms with either 1.5 meter guidance? How long will that remain in place for? How do we create digital and remote learning spaces that are also always accessible? And how do we provide and secure and manage access and segmentation for both staff and students? And this is where we've been trying to make and enable e-learning solutions, enabling secure remote access to labs, delivering virtual desktops and publishing applications in a centralized management console makes adjusting to changes and pandemics, that little bit easier. Without going into too much detail, we've focused on developing solutions that tries to tick many boxes. Something that delivers a great experience, that delivers agility and readiness, that is also enhancing your security, that's easy to deploy, and also naturally reduces the total cost of ownership. As we know that education establishments are faced with continued budget constraints and changing times. So in order to move forward, you also need to ensure that whatever you're doing is cost effective, affordable, and will last a long time within your establishment. And when we look at each sort of section and we start taking things like, technically a solution could actually be, really powerful under the hood. But if the user experience is poor, then it simply wouldn't work. By focusing on standard user requirements, we've aimed to sort of develop an overall great experience for both teachers and students. By replicating aspects such as native gestures, drag and drop, across devices, aims to deliver a level of fluidity in the overall experience, coupled with the flexibility of delivering Windows applications and/or desktops through any HTML5 browser to any device, enables establishments to plan, adjust, and cater for future changes. Now, you also need to react with agility and be ready for these changes. For example, if we head into a second wave or third wave, as some are calling it, or even another crisis or pandemic in the future, being ready to keep the lights on is critical. As more establishments look towards cloud solutions, be it infrastructure applications or multi-cloud, there will be an increased demand for management and deliverability, but also not forgetting the old adage of avoiding vendor lock-in. And being able to mix and match different OSs and technologies, and the flexibility of supporting teachers and students with solutions that are either on-premise or in the cloud or hybrid will become more critical. And whilst being agile and flexible are driving factors, this does come with additional risk and security concerns. By implementing virtualized desktops, for example, the actual data rests in the data center or remote servers. Now, this eliminates the loss of data on local machines. Now, because the data is centralized, it's easier to detect, isolate viruses or threats before they cause damage. Now, IT staff can define, several filtering rules, for example, to decide who can access a published resource based on user IP address, MAC address, gateway, and also further implement more defined client policies. Now, the Parallels RAS Secure Client Gateway also encrypts with SSL or FIPS protocols. Now, this helps organizations adhere to compliance policies such as PCI DSS, GDPR, and HIPAA. Coupled with multi-factor authentication or smart card authentication, this provides that additional layer of security access. As we have multi-environments, multiple students, varying staff requirements, contractors, being able to ensure that we have that level of security developed within a solution starts to provide a level of resilience required. Now, unlike a few competitors, we do work with many of the leading authentication providers. Just to give you an idea, for example, Microsoft Azure MFA, Duo, Forti Authenticator, the Radius server, Google Authenticator, or even a SafeNet server. Now, by now, you're also possibly focusing on enhancing the user experience. We've been trying to be agile and ready for anything, but also to ensure a solution is secure and protected, that it's bound to be a little complicated. And on one hand, you would be correct. However, we've developed RAS with a focus on making sure that it is actually easy to deploy, configure, and maintain. A single management console to manage applications, to manage desktops, and even provide help desk assistance. Now, a solution that can provide management of multi-tenancy of different businesses or groups, be able to publish VDI and apps to groups of students, or even to define and split out different teaching requirements. This starts to create a multifaceted solution that can be managed under a single console. Add to this as well with auto provisioning and auto scaling, Parallels RAS certainly dynamically can actually create and remove and also release and load balance Windows operating systems based on predefined criteria. So this also ensures that any sudden spikes that are, can easily be managed without any manual interaction required. Now, the simplicity continues to be proven. When we hear feedback from customers who took just over a week, for example, to enable 600 users to work remotely recently, or another that actually spent over a week trying to create a Citrix demonstration, and then did a comparative demonstration with Parallels RAS, and it took them 2 days. And this kind of experience starts to look at how you can reduce and increase your total cost of ownership. Aside from making it easy to deploy and configure and maintain and sort of reduce the complexity, it's also been designed to ensure it is a relatively easy to use solution that requires minimal knowledge to configure and to manage the infrastructure, but also to reduce the learning curve. To help support reducing the learning curve, we also provide all training free of charge. And now we've developed a solution that provides application publishing, virtual desktops, remote PC, high availability and load balancing, coupled with 24/7 support, and that also enables the ability to access any window application or desktop from any device, be it Windows, Mac, iOS, Android. And then we've created this all into a one license model. Now, all this is based on a concurrent user licensing model. So that basically means that for the number of users that would physically connect at any one time is the average number of users you would have to license. So for example, you may have 5,000 students, but the likelihood of them all connecting at the same time would be very rare, especially at universities. However, you may find that at any one time, maybe 10% could be active. So by looking towards a concurrent user license basis, this model actually greatly helps reducing a perceived cost in the fact that you're only licensing for a usage, not a potential usage. And as with all organizations, we would be remiss not to provide a couple of quotes from a few of our customers. Now, when the deck is made available, you will have a few links to the case studies listed here as well. But the main aspects that I actually wanted to highlight is that in my short time at Parallels, I only joined in May this year. And I've spoken to several customers who've expressed how much they genuinely enjoyed using Parallels RAS. The simplicity for administering, large and small environments, to be able to publish applications to Windows and Mac devices, but also deliver VDI to specific users, and then also enable remote access to remote labs, all under one roof, seems to be a very common thread. Now, just before I sort of hand over to Paul for the demo, we will have a Q&A following it. However, as I sort of mentioned earlier, if during the demo you'd like to ask a question, please do raise your hand in the chats or drop a line in the chat system. And we're more than willing to try and help or talk you through anything specific as well. So what I'll do now is I'll pass over to Paul, who will start to run through a live demo.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, so just while I share my screen here, obviously you've seen or heard from Marcus that remote application servers are really feature-rich product. So the idea of the demo really is not to go through all of these features and bombard you with those, but just to give you a bit of a sample of what it looks like from a user perspective. There are obviously a number of ways in which we can cater users and connect users, and I'll talk a little bit about those. But also just to show you some of the common or sort of popular things that we're seeing in education at the moment, and that's focusing around application publishing, and also the remote PC functionality, which allows us to extend usability of labs. So maybe we've got workstations within the classroom, and we can provide students access to that on a sort of 24/7 basis. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the HTML5 web portal. Now, typically, when users are connecting externally, this is the most likely way that they would connect. It's not the only way. They can connect through, platform-specific clients. So I'm on a Windows device here, so I can connect from this Windows application. Obviously, if an iPad or a Mac that they're connecting from, then they can have that, as I say, platform-specific client installed and configured. Or they can just come through this portal. And of course, if it was a more internal setup, we also support thin clients as well, so we can go down that route. So yeah, this is the HTML5 portal. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And what it's doing here is it actually checks to see whether I've got the client installed, and if not, it will walk the user through a simple process of installing that. If they really didn't want to connect with that install client or install that client, maybe it's not their device, they can just connect purely through this browser. It's also checked my credentials, and as Marcus mentioned, we can include two-factor authentication within that, or SAML authentication as well. and after it's passed the authentication, it's then displaying to me as a user what applications or desktops that I'm entitled to. So we can go into the folder here and see a whole lot of applications, including Office applications. And we can look at the different types of desktops that we can publish out. I'm going to start with some applications, and I'm going to go back to the old favorite of Office. I'm just right-clicking on here to force it to open in HTML5, because that's what I want to show you first. So this is the, if you like, the clientless access. No need to install a client. They can just do it all through any HTML5 compatible browser. So you can see we've opened PowerPoint. I'm just going to create a document. And let's go File, New, and create another one. And I can click this button here that takes me back to my application listing, or actually I can view favorites. So we can go through and add any application to favorites just by clicking on the little star there. But I can also then open more applications. So again, just going to make sure it opens in HTML5. And there we can see Word opening. And I shall quickly create a document there too. The reason for creating or opening multiple applications and creating a few documents is, even though we're not presenting a full desktop to the user, just those published applications, I have the ability to quickly flick between the different documents that I've created and got open and the different applications. And that's very consistent across all the clients, any client that you connect from. Again, Marcus mentioned there's a lot of functionality in there to make those smaller form factor devices really usable, pinch and zoom, biometric support, and obviously this ability to quickly flick between the different applications that they've got open. Of course, we can also launch full desktops within the browser, and even launching that full desktop. Actually, let's go ahead and open it. This time it opens in a new tab, and while that's logging in, so even with the HTML5 support here, or HTML5 access, we do support universal printing. We can upload and download files. We've got shortcuts available, and clipboard support as well, and we can go full screen with that as well. So, it's a Windows 10 looking desktop. We're all fairly familiar with that by now. So let me minimize this and go over to my platform-specific clients. I'm going to connect to the same demo lab that we saw here. And you can see the same application folders and desktop folders. Now, as a user, we can just simply launch the application from here in the same way. We might say, I use this PowerPoint an awful lot of the time, so I want to pop that on the desktop. Now, from a user perspective, and we can see there's some other icons appeared as well, that I don't have to launch a website or or an application. I can just come to the shortcut and double click and launch that. And what this should do is take over that session that we've already created in the browser. It also integrates in with the start menu, so we can, users can just search in their start menu for their application. So that could be, supported on Windows, obviously, also Mac, even Android. We can create application shortcuts on the desktop drawer. Application drawer, sorry. So yeah, here you can see, the presentation that I created within the browser has come over. It looks and feels like it's running on this PC here, but actually it's a remote application server, so it's delivered out of a data center or cloud platform. It's nice and secure, so obviously we're encrypting that connection. And also you can see the other application that we also brought over in the Word, or created in Word. Okay, so that's a very quick look at what it looks like and connects from a user perspective. Let me take you through a little bit of the management console. So what you're looking at here is that I've already RDP'd to one of my servers in my demo lab here. I've already opened the console and I've gone to the farm section here. This is essentially where we do all the management, day-to-day management. I'm looking at a particular site, so yeah, we can have multiple sites within a farm. That could constitute an on-premise data center, maybe a secondary one in the cloud, which is also a really important factor for distance learning. We might want to centrally manage all the workloads, but deploy them in a different part of the world, which is closer to those users, different region in AWS or Azure. But again, we can still manage it from that one console. So we can open up those kind of opportunities. So I'm looking at a site of a particular designer. Now I won't go into too much detail in here, but it just gives you a flavour of some of the components that make up the RAS solution. So we've got the secure client gateways. Essentially, they are providing that secure access for the remote clients or internal clients as well. We can connect through the secure client gateways, and also they provide the HTML5 portal that we've just seen. So yeah, it's encrypting the connections in SSL certificates, etc. We then have the publishing agents. That's like the brains of the solution. It's involved with lots of things, from the authentication to load balancing to auto scaling, and a whole lot more. Again, that we've kind of briefly touched on. And then we've got the back end infrastructure. Now this is really important, that we can be very flexible in our deployment. We support a lot of older operating systems. We do see some applications still need to run on Server 2008, for example. We can host those in the same solution, but it allows us to deliver the right technology to the right set of users. And what we find is that session hosts or terminal servers are the most cost effective. So whether we're publishing those applications that we saw just previously in the user demo, or whether we're doing full desktops that look and feel like Windows 10, but actually are still off the session host servers, they're the most cost effective way. So we can deliver that technology to task-based users. Then we have this section here, which is more focused around virtual desktops, some traditional desktop-based VDI. So of course we can deliver that as well. That tends to be a more expensive way, but there are requirements for that, and it is really useful within education, especially if students are on an IT course and then they need the ability to install applications, their own applications, and I suppose over various weeks of different modules, they're taking that installation configuration further. Then we can do things like check that virtual desktop out and assign it to that user, so that they can sort of carry on each week and throughout that course. And of course, at the end of that, we can clear that assignment out, and it'll be released back to the pool, maybe even recreated automatically, so it's nice and fresh from that template. And then finally, but certainly not least, we have the remote PCs, and this is very popular in education, and also become very popular during this COVID-19 period, because again, Marcus mentioned that we can quickly, or customers can quickly deploy a solution that allows users to connect back to that physical PC that's in the office that they're currently unable to physically go and sit at. So what I wanted to do is just show you now some publishing. So we'll quickly go through and create an application, and then I'll flip back to the user interface, and we can see the application that's been published. And then also just walk you through the steps to deploy a remote PC, and just really highlight that it's an easy to use solution and quick to deploy. So to publish some new resource on the already the infrastructure that we've got set up in this diagram here, we go to publishing, and then here you can see the applications folder that we saw, and the user demo, and the desktops folder. So that mirrors what the user saw there. To publish something new, we bring up a wizard. The whole console is very wizard driven. So if you're adding new servers, new components, it's all done via a wizard, and a lot of admin tasks are done for you. So within this wizard, we can choose application, and that's what I'll go through. But if we wanted to publish a VDI desktop in the different flavors, we can choose that. And we will actually come back to that and publish one of these shortly. We can support application virtualization, just web links, access to documents, or users file share paths. We can publish those out, obviously, securely as well. But let's go back to application. I'm going to choose RD session hosts to deploy my applications from. And I'm going to choose installed applications. And then I'm going to choose my standard group here and go next. Now, this can take a few seconds, but what it's doing is it's looking at those servers, looking at the applications that have been installed or installed on a template already, and it will bring me back that list in any second. There we go. Excellent. So yeah, we can see all those applications installed, and as an admin, I can just go through and tick as many different applications that we want to publish. I'm just trying to find some that are not obviously published already. So let's go with some of the WordPerfect Office Suite applications. So we go next now, and then we get an overview of the applications that we're going to publish. So I've chosen 6 from where and what servers. We go next, finish, and then we have to click apply just to commit those settings. And there we can see we've got the the new applications now. Now I could start creating folders and managing those further. Those folders can be hidden from the users, so there's administrative folders. And then or I could start dragging them into different already created folders. But let's bring that out because I can see I've already got one there. So we can then look at some of the properties of the applications that we've just published. So we could make some changes to that if we wanted. We could apply some filtering. So by default, all users that pass authentication can launch that application. But if we wanted to filter that to certain user groups, maybe staff, students, as a basic example. But maybe we might want to look at where they're connecting from and what device they're connecting from, and also filter it out to that. So we can say, if it's a student and they're connecting internally, now they can run WordPerfect, but we may have a different set of rules when they're connecting, or a different set of applications when they're connecting externally. So let's click apply. So let's go back to the user, and we'll go to the HTML5 portal. It's just a message that I got when I moved sessions earlier. And if I just hit, obviously I could log out and log back in, but I can also just hit refresh, and we can see the new applications that we've published there, and we can launch those in the same way within the HTML5 browser, or by default we double click with the install client. And of course, if I come here and do the same, you can see the same new applications that we've just deployed. So it's really as straightforward as that to deploy new applications to users, and just as quickly if I decide I don't want that application anymore, and maybe let's get rid of this one. Click apply again, and again come here, refresh. Those applications have disappeared. So the other thing we wanted to go through, or other feature, is the remote PC support. There are actually 2 ways in which we can import those physical workstations into RAS to deploy. The first sort of basic method is through this remote PC section. And we can simply go here, we can click on add, and we can put in our host name, and then we go and get the MAC address, and we do that because we support Wake on LAN. So if those PCs have been switched off by a user, and they are then requested, we can power those on, and then send the user to that desktop once it's finished loading effectively. But yeah, so we put in the remote PC there. It's gone to check to see whether our agent's installed. I've pre-installed that just to save a little bit of time. But effectively, we can install it at that point, and then we can click OK. And yes, we can automate all this. We do have PowerShell API and REST API, so we can script all those should we want to. And we can see that that's imported and that's ready to go. Next thing I need to do is to publish access to that. So I come to the publishing section again. I'm going to do it under my remote PC folder here. So I'm going to click there and then click add. I choose desktop this time on the wizard. I'm going to choose remote PC, and I will call it my desktop. And then I select the remote PC there, click finish, click apply, and then again, if I come out to my user side of things, click refresh there, come to desktops. You can see there's my desktop, and there's a little example of that folder here is an administrated only folder, so it's not displayed to the users. So that's traditionally that function is more around potentially office workers who want to connect from home. When it comes to education and we've got labs, we configure it a slightly different way. So we come to the farm, and under this VDI section, we add in a provider. Now, if I just bring up the wizard for the provider, just to give you an idea of what they are. If I choose virtualization to start with, we can see here all the on-premise hypervisors and hyper-converged solutions that we support, with Nutanix and recently added Scale. But we've also got this remote PC functionality, and that's essentially what I've already got set up here. This, the RAS1 server up there. Just before I talk a bit more about that, just wanted to highlight this as well. We can choose cloud computing as a provider. And then we can add in our Azure subscription, and then that allows us to treat Azure as a hypervisor. So we can have our templates, and we can very easily manage, auto scaling, etc. So as users log in, it will auto scale up and down, of course. So yeah, we can do that. We can also support AWS as mentioned, but not through this mechanism just yet. So yeah, going back to the remote PC. So once I've added that, there are a couple of options in here. I can basically point that at different OUs, or we can set it to static and manually add those PCs again, or import them from a CSV file, etc. But essentially, that will then allow us to pool all those PCs. So you can see here I've got remote PC pool, but what we see from in education is that they essentially the classrooms, they'll add the classroom name in there and then add in those PCs that are in that classroom. And then again, once we've done that, the thing next to do would be to publish that resource. So again, we come down to add. We choose desktop again. This time we choose virtual desktop, and then it could be lab 1, and we can then choose from what pool. So if I previously created lab 1 pool, I could choose that, and click finish, click apply, and then basically again, if I refresh, you can see lab 1, and the difference being there is when a user double clicked on that, we'd obviously look to see what machines were available in that lab, and then assign the user to one and set up the connection in much the same way. All these are desktops, but I can just double click on one, and it will get me connected to that, which is down there. And again, very Windows 10 looking desktop, but it's what we call session-based VDI there. Okay, so very quickly, just to highlight a few more things, and to make sure we've got some time for Q&A. We do have universal printing and scanning support. We've mentioned the multi-factor authentication that we can support, which is configured there, and the SAML integration that we can do. We do have device management as well. So what this allows us to do is repurpose, maybe aging PCs and turn them into thin client-like devices. With that, it improves the login experience for the students or staff, whether they're connecting to the applications or desktops. And also it gives us some power management and sort of remote assistance, so we can power manage those machines. We can actually schedule those tasks, so to say power them on at certain times, power them off. Maybe we deploy them in a library, and we can set that schedule to have them on in time for the library hours and turn them off after. One thing to mention, so we can shadow that device. So help desk operatives can shadow that device if users are having problems. We can, of course, shadow all the sessions, remote PC sessions here as well. We can log them off. We can shadow them again. Send them a message, kill off processes. We can do that on session hosts with the application deployment as well. So that's device management. Worth knowing about. Policies, we can centrally manage all the client-side policies. That again makes administration really easy and a less configuration for the users effectively. And then finally, we also have monitoring and reporting, and all of these components that we've talked about, whether connecting externally, the monitoring, reporting, access to session host servers or VDI or the remote PC, that's all covered under our one RAS license. So there's no hidden gotchas on, okay, I want to move my workload now out of my data center into the cloud. There's no coming back to Parallels and asking for different licenses at that point. Okay, so that is it from a quick demo perspective, and I would say highlighting the application publishing and the remote PC publishing. I'm going to stop sharing now, and we shall see if we have any questions to answer. So, Marcus, are you still live?
I am still live, Paul. Yep.
Excellent.
So at the moment, I've not seen any questions appear in the chat. Or any messages come through.
They must have covered everything.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, if there are any questions at all, please feel free to either unmute yourself or just drop a quick note in the chat if there's anything that you would like to have covered off, or just to ask a query about. Just give it a couple more minutes. I did have one. It's just a comment actually from one which was sorry they had to drop off, but the demo was really enlightening, so we'll take that one. We'll take that one. So in that case, I mean, obviously, firstly, I appreciate that everyone's taking the time out of the day to attend this session and this overview. We have tried to keep it fairly informative. There is a lot more under the hood for Parallels RAS, and I'm not sure, Paul, or I could just quickly share the POC screen or slides.
Yeah, let me make you a presenter. Okay, you should be able to do that again.
Okay, so in terms of a next steps, what we would typically suggest is to look at trialing Parallels RAS. You can go to the website, and there is a trial link on there, and now it enables you to download the trial to run on your premises, for example, or in your own data center or shared data center. But we also have pre-canned from the marketplace, basically installed in either Microsoft Azure or even in AWS, so you can trial it within the cloud as well. Now, the advantage behind the trial is that it is a full feature, fully functional trial. There are no restrictions in its usage, and in actual fact, we also enable you to trial it with up to 50 concurrent users, so you can get a bit of a broad spectrum of uses depending on your requirements as well. So, for example, if you think about trying it from a student's perspective and also a teacher's point of view, but also from an admin perspective, and looking at different application groups as well. An alternative version of trialing this is also looking at it from a proof of concept. And this is where we would engage with you probably on a more of a defined plan, where we'll work with you to understand your actual requirements and develop a POC. It does only take a few days to actually implement, depending on the requirements, and then obviously try and work with you towards understanding what your levels and measurements of success would be as well. So, what are you trying to achieve from it? Is it a mixture of VDI? Is it a mixture of application publishing? Or is it simply to enable a bit more of an enhancement around, connecting via RDP and enhancing RDS, for example? So there are lots of ways in which we can work with you. None of these carry a cost. So I do want to make that point quite fairly clear. There is no charge. It's a fully functional 30-day trial. In order to try and help you understand and utilize the solution. So if you are interested in that, then naturally, we can work with you as well. Obviously, we've done the Q&A already, but if there aren't any more questions at this stage, then quite simply, I'd just like to say thank you for your attendance. I hope it's been informative. If there are any additional questions, or you would like to have a deeper one-to-one session, please feel free to get in contact with us. But in the meantime, I'll just quickly check to make sure there's no more questions before we end the session. Nope, I think we're all clear. So on that point, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.